morning. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Welcome to the April 23rd, 2024 Planning Commission regular meeting. I'm Blaney Miller, Chair of the Commission. As always, I ask everyone today to please be efficient in your comments and avoid redundancy so that we can hear from as many viewpoints on as many cases as possible today. We start every meeting with the opportunity for the public to comment on an item not contained on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda today? And seeing none, we will move. There are no items on consent today, so we'll move on to committee reports. We have 2 items in committee reports, both from the Text Change Committee, and I will turn to our Text Change Committee Chair, Nicole Bennett, for those reports.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Text Change is reporting out 2 items, TC 323, Clean Transportation Ordinance, and TC 623, Streetscape Plans and Custom Signage Plans. For the first one, TC 323, Clean Transportation Ordinance, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Harden to provide a summary, and I think we're making a couple changes to what's being recommended for that one.
Yes, that's right. Good morning, Jason Harden, Office of Sustainability. I won't go into a lot of detail unless there's a desire from the commission to do so, because I think both versions of the Text Change Committee got a presentation about this at one point. So I think everybody's heard it, went through the process, got some feedback from stakeholders, made a couple of adjustments. It does, quick summary, provide for EV infrastructure and several new uses, primarily the apartment building type. Also adjusts our overall pedestrian connectivity standards and requires more bicycle and pedestrian connections where previously there were exemptions being made. And then lastly, a drive-through portion that prohibits new drive-throughs, does not regulate existing drive-throughs in the downtown DX and urban frontages and office mixed-use districts. The adjustment that staff is recommending that we make has to do with a very small part of the overall package. It deals with the drive-in provision. Drive-in, a facility where essentially you're served in your car. Sonic is a good example of that kind of facility. Specifically, there's 2 places where it references a drive-in the frequent transit development option, and because of pending litigation, we're recommending that we remove that from this text change. Could be something that we revisit in a future text change, but want to avoid touching that existing code language because of that litigation. So that would be simply removing sections 1 and 2 from the overall ordinance package. And the commission can simply recommend doing so, and that's what we will present to City Council.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
Okay, so if there are no questions or comments, then I will make a motion. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment with the change noted by staff to remove sections 1 and 2 and put in a future text change.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion or debate? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
The second item is TC 623, Streetscape Plans and Custom Signage Plans. This text change amends the Unified Development Ordinance to revise the existing streetscape plan process and to create a new custom signage plan process. The text change would also introduce 2 new sign types, freestanding channel letter and attached channel letter, and create an allowance for intra-development signs. Text change heard from the applicant and discussed the text change, and we recommend approval to the Planning Commission. Any questions or discussion about this text change?
Hey, I'm a little uncomfortable turning streetscape plans over to the, it's not the Appearance Commission, what is it now?
Design review.
Design review. I think the development of streetscape plans properly belongs with the Planning Commission. I understand that workloads are an issue. I agree that the Design Commission was better position to handle custom sign and the new sign ordinance. I don't have a problem with, but I would like to keep the streetscape planning in the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or debates? Maybe from our commissioner that served on both?
I guess just a question for Commissioner Otwell, just to understand, I'm comfortable with it going to the DRC, so I'd just like to understand what your concerns are before I make a decision.
I think that there can be a lot of substantial decisions that can be made in a streetscape plan, and I think that the Planning Commission has better visibility and public engagement.
Thank you. Other additional thoughts?
Well, I guess, so what is your, are you suggesting that we move it forward with the change that it stays at Planning Commission versus the Design Review Committee, but all the other discussion and things put forward pass through?
I would be comfortable with that. I think that'd be great. Or we could hold that, or we could pass it the way it is, but I would vote against it.
Commissioner Fox?
Clarification question from staff. Can you remind me the newly branded Appearance Commission is quasi-judicial, correct?
I'm going to let Keegan McDonald talk with you about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Keegan McDonald, Planning and Development, and I'll, of course, defer to the City Attorney's Office if I misstate anything. But you're correct that the primary function of the Design Review Commission right now is quasi-judicial. They're kind of sitting in actually the Planning Commission's capacity as designated by the City Council to perform those QJ duties. So they primarily review design alternates, but they have a pretty wide portfolio of other items. And part of the reason that we suggested streetscape plans move to their kind of review was just given their expressed desire over the past several years to take on non-QJ related items and the fact that design alternates are mostly transportation related. So they're reviewing very similar type of requests on kind of a site-by-site basis. Obviously, streetscape plans typically have a much larger scope, and as Commissioner Otwell pointed out, can go beyond kind of the specific design concerns of one site and branch out a little bit. But that was sort of our reasoning.
Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
Wasn't there also a workload reason?
Yeah, that was also discussed among staff, just knowing that the Appearance Commission has been able to manage the number of design alternates pretty well to date. They only typically have a few to review each meeting. Sometimes they have none. And I believe they still often have space on their calendar to meet twice a month. And so, again, they just have a lot of seemingly more bandwidth perhaps than the Planning Commission. That was just staff's assessment, but, of course, the Planning Commission might feel differently.
To address Commissioner Otwell's concern about engagement, would their process mimic ours?
Yes, so it wouldn't really change, the process would not change in terms of the level of public notice, let's say, for a streetscape plan. We would still provide, there would be a pre-application meeting that would occur, just as there is today, where the applicant would meet with neighbors surrounding the streetscape plan area, and then there would be opportunity at the Appearance Commission meeting itself, where people, again, would be notified with mail notice to attend the Appearance Commission meeting. And then, of course, on to council for a final public hearing and vote where notice would also occur.
Can
Commissioner
I ask a
Fox?
follow-up question? If we could, I guess, walk through a hypothetical. So a zoning case comes in, and one of the mechanisms to make it compliant or consistent with the comprehensive plan would be to create streetscape plan recommendations. How would that work procedurally? So oftentimes in conditions, there is language related to what the nature of the streetscape might look like. So procedurally, what would happen there if the streetscape plan itself would be moved to a different body?
So we've seen one streetscape plan in the last 10 years.
So it's not a hot topic.
I just offer that as
Okay.
context. And the one that was filed, I think, really prompted staff to look at this process and make sure we had articulated a path, right? And so your question about where do streetscape plans and rezoning requests interface, I feel like the streetscape plan, in my mind, comes much farther along in the development process than the rezoning request does. They certainly could happen simultaneously, but that does seem unlikely to me that that would happen.
I'm thinking maybe in terms of very large-scale rezonings, kind of the scale similar to like a downtown south. I could have
Right,
seen
so-
streetscape recommendations coming forward at that time.
Yeah, so typically when we see a request for a very large area of acreage, think about that Hodge Road assemblage that we saw, about 500 acres, that came forward, what, in 2021 or 22? We would encourage an applicant to consider the plan development option there because it offers them an opportunity to provide certainty about their intent, what the outcome might be expected. That's an option that they have. We cannot require that of them. And I think that is a more likely path that an applicant might choose rather than a streetscape plan. In my mind, the streetscape plan is more about amending the standards of the UDO outside of the rezoning process. I don't know if Mr. McDonald or Mr. York cares to offer additional context or thoughts about that.
I think I would probably defer to City Attorney on this matter, but the only thing I'm picking up that might not have been answered is if there is an event of a conflict between like a condition based upon a rezoning and an adopted streetscape plan. I've not personally encountered that, but I'm sure it could happen. So I'd just defer to the city attorney if there was some guidance as to which would take precedent.
Were you asking about whether there's a conflict in the streetscape plan and a conflict in the rezoning, or were you just asking about if someone wanted to bring a streetscape plan to address compliance with a comprehensive plan
Correct.
with a rezoning?
The latter.
The latter. We haven't had this process in place as it's being proposed, so this is just my assumption of what would occur, that the what are they, the DRC?
Yeah.
Yeah. The DRC would be made aware of the rezoning. If it stayed the way it is in the text change, the DRC would be made aware of the rezoning when reviewing the streetscape plan, and the Planning Commission would be made aware of the pending streetscape plan when reviewing the rezoning. I mean, nothing would be hid from anybody, and you could look at them and discuss them. The board that would need to make the official recommendation to the city council on the particular application as currently drafted would be for the rezoning, it's this body, and for the streetscape plan, it's the DRC sitting as a planning commission. So because we're treating them both as a type of rezoning, it's just that many of the design alternates they're looking at through the quasi-judicial process are transportation-related. Sometimes they're revisions to streetscapes, is my understanding, and from the adopted streetscapes that we have in Chapter 8, because that's the means of getting relief unless you do a full-blown streetscape plan. And so I think staff thought workload, familiarity with the topic, the desire of the DRC to have some non-QJ matters, and this would put a related familiar matter in front of them in the non-QJ setting. And so that's why staff made that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Haver?
I appreciate the conversation. I was involved and chaired the Appearance Commission for a number of years, and I'm comfortable understanding the makeup of that body of sending the streetscape plans to the Appearance Commission. So I just, again, just after listening, I wanted to consider Commissioner Otwell's point, but I'm still comfortable moving this forward.
Thank you. Committee Chair Bennett?
Excuse me. I agree with Commissioner Haver. I appreciate the conversation, but I think I'm comfortable with moving it forward, designating the Design Review Commission as the body that would review streetscape plans.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make it. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement. I have lots of S's today. Sorry. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment.
Do a motion to a second?
Second.
Commissioner Haver has seconded. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. 5-2. That's what I meant. I was writing 5-2. Thank you very much. Moving on to old business. There are 2 items on the agenda today. For these items, the commission has already received a full staff presentation, applicant presentation, and heard from the public. Our focus today is going to be on the updates and changes since our last meeting. So the first item is item D1, rezoning Z6223 at 1020 Harper Road. This case is to change approximately 1.88 acres from R4 with special residential parking overlay district to R6, conditional use with special residential parking overlay. This case was discussed at our March 12th meeting and deferred to allow the applicant time to submit revised conditions. And I will turn to Hannah Recko for a brief presentation from city planning staff.
Good morning, Hannah Reckow, Planning and Development. So you deferred this case at your last meeting to allow the signed version of the revised conditions to come in, which they have. So I can outline what those are. They include an amendment to Condition 1 to reduce the maximum number of principal dwelling units from 18 to 16, and then the addition of 2 new zoning conditions. So one pertains to parking, would require at least 2 on-site parking spaces per principal dwelling unit on the site. And the third pertains to side lot setbacks. So it names properties sort of on the northwest and southeast side that principal dwelling units would be set back at least 10 feet from. So those changes affect the maximum units, obviously, and then the setbacks that would apply to the site. And then just as a reminder, this request is consistent with the future land use map, consistent overall with the comprehensive plan, and that includes this list of policies. There were no inconsistent policies that were identified, and your deadline for action does fall before your next regularly scheduled meeting. So you need to either take action on this case today or request a extension of review.
Thank you very much. We have already received public comment on this case, but so I can get a show of hands, but just so I can get a sense by show of hands, is there anyone today who wishes to speak on any of the proposed changes or any other aspects of this case? And seeing none, we can bring it back to the table for comments from the commission. Any additional thoughts from our commissioners? And seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion. Vice Chair Raines.
Thanks, Chair Miller. Small. So for zoning case Z6223, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Commissioner Fox has seconded. Any further discussion or debate? By show of hands, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 6-1. Would you like to state for the record the reason for opposition?
Sure. I object to the requirement to add parkings into the condition, and I recognize that it's a largely symbolic condition because the developer is very likely to build that much parking anyway, so this is largely a symbolic vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. But would it be appropriate to say that adding a parking requirement to the case runs contrary to our policy of not having parking requirements?
It does.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That motion passes 6-1, and we can move on to our next case. Thank you. The next item is item D2, rezoning case Z124, the Wake Forest Assemblage. This case is to change approximately 0.69 acres from OX3 with NCOD to OX4 Urban Limited with conditions. At our April 9th meeting, the applicant requested we defer this case until this meeting to allow the applicant time to submit revised conditions. The applicant submitted the revised conditions, and as long as we received signatures by last Friday, we are able to consider those today. And I will turn to Matthew Burns for a presentation from city planning staff.
Good morning, Planning Commission members. Matthew Burns with Planning and Development. The applicant did submit signed revised conditions by last Friday. Excuse me. And your deadline for action is June 8th, 2024. It's just a reminder that this site is over near the Wake Forest Road, North Person Street split. Here is a summary of the revised conditions. They have removed boarding house and social service use category from the list of prohibited uses. They have revised condition number 2 so that buildings over 35 feet in height are now required to be set back at least 50 feet from the southeastern lot line, which is shared with 3 abutting properties. Condition 3, which requires a 10-foot wide protective yard with a fence between 6.5 and 9 feet high, that remains the same. They've struck the condition that limits the maximum building height for townhomes. And they've also prohibited certain vinyl siding as a building material and limited EIFS siding to only part of the ground floor and no more than 20% of the total building facade. And the condition that limits building height on the overall property to 50 feet remains unchanged as well. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map and the urban form map, and it's consistent with policies related to future land use, conditional districts, compact development, transit access, and buffering. Your deadline for action is June 8th, and there are no outstanding issues. Please let me know if I can answer any questions.
Thank you. We've already received public comment on this case, but so I can get a sense by show of hands, is there anyone here who wishes to speak on any of the proposed changes or any other aspect of this case not previously discussed? I believe I see one. Anyone else?
Okay. All right. Commissioner Miller, members of the commission, Toby Coleman with Smith Anderson here on behalf of the applicant. Just wanted to say we are available for questions if you all have any questions about the revised conditions.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other interest in public comment, we'll bring it back to the table for additional discussions, and I'll thank the applicant for making the long list of changes that we discussed at our last meeting. Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Haver.
I agree. I'd like to thank the applicant for making the changes, listen to some of the concerns of the Planning Commission. I'm comfortable and I'm ready to move forward with a recommendation for approval if there's no other concerns with the commission.
Seeing no interest in further comment, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of zoning amendment Z0124.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Vice Chair Raines is seconded. By show of hands, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Now moving to new business. These requests have not appeared on a previous Planning Commission agenda, so we will hear a full staff presentation, an applicant presentation, and we will hear from the public. The first, item E1, is CP 124. This is a city-initiated comp plan amendment to amend map T1, the street plan, for a portion of Jones Franklin Road. And we will now turn to Bronwyn Reedus for a presentation from city planning staff.
Thanks. Bronwyn Reedus, Planning and Development. So again, this is Comprehensive Plan Amendment CP 124 for Jones Franklin Road, specifically the segment of the road between its intersection with Fort Sumter Road to the north and Tryon Road to the south. The request is to redesignate on the street plan map. Today, it is a 6-lane divided avenue, and the request is to redesignate to a 4-lane divided avenue. Your deadline for action is July 22nd. Comp plan amendments have that longer review period of 90 days. So the impetus for this request, I have Table T-1 summary of general street capacity shown on the slide here. This is from the comprehensive plan. It shows the general capacities that can be accommodated through the different street cross-sections. So I have highlighted the 4-lane street cross-section and the 6-lane street cross-section. The annual average daily traffic for Jones Franklin Road is 16,000 vehicles per day based on current traffic counts. And then the capital area metropolitan planning organization's metropolitan transportation plan, the 2050 projection for Jones Franklin Road is 30,000 vehicles per day. And so, as you can see, that does fall within what can be accommodated in the 4-lane street cross-section. And so that is kind of where this request is originating from. Here is a look at the segment of Jones Franklin Road that's included in the request, again, between Fort Sumter Road and Tryon Road. Here's what the change to the street plan map would look like. Existing, you have the 6-lane divided avenue. It would be modified to the 4-lane divided avenue. And then here's an overview in the change in the design of the road. So you can see the biggest thing that's changing is the width of the right-of-way and the width of the pavement of the road itself. Things like bike lane, sidewalks, street trees, all of those are required for both of the cross-sections. Biggest thing changing here would be the width and the amount of pavement going down. The request is consistent with several policies in the comprehensive plan and not inconsistent with any policies. And there are no remaining outstanding issues. Again, your deadline for action is July 22nd. I'm happy to answer any questions you have for staff. Again, this is a city-initiated request, so we have transportation staff here as well, but there won't be a separate applicant presentation.
Thank you very much. I believe we open for public comment. Is there anyone in favor of this in the public who would like to speak? If so, you have a total of 10 minutes. Thank you. Yes, please come to the podium and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Khaled Al-Zubi from IC Engineering, and I am with my client here we have a property on 2308 Jones Franklin Road. I have a few questions. First of all, what is your timeline? I know it used to be 6 lanes with NCDOT. What is your timeline for this widen or this change? The second is how you're going to work with Town of Cary, NCDOT, and how is that affecting Dillard Drive improvement of Jones Franklin Road and Dillard Drive? So would you please give us more information so we can prepare our site plan for 2308, which is under jurisdiction of Town of Cary, but we are looking into amending it to City of Raleigh if that's possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is just the public comment period, but I've captured those changes so we can ask staff. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak in support of this project? Then, seeing none, we'll move on to the opposition. Those opposed to this case will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. Please come to the podium. And then, seeing none, we will bring this back to the table. So I guess we might start off with some of those good questions for staff. Could we discuss could you provide more information about the timeline for this change?
So the change would immediately impact the street plan map, which is a long-range planning tool. It gives guidance for development, and it tells you what kind of the cross-section you have to adhere to on your site plan when you do a larger development. I was able to coordinate with the town of Cary. We sent them notice as well as did some email coordination. I think the cross-section shown for Jones Franklin Road on their comprehensive transportation plan is a 5-lane thoroughfare, which would be the 4 lanes with the center lane, which would be comparable to this 4-lane divided avenue. The divided term refers to having a median or a center lane, so it's comparable to that 5-lane cross-section.
What is the width of the right way? 125 or 100?
We can go back. I think if you're within the town of Cary jurisdiction, you would adhere to the town of Cary cross-section. If you are within their jurisdiction on their side of Jones Franklin Road. But just kind of for your information, for City of Raleigh jurisdiction, the 4-lane cross-section has a 104-foot complete right-of-way.
Thank you. And this presentation is also in our agenda if you'd like for a copy of this. Yes.
If I may, one more question. I have under property of Jones Franklin Road for the city of Raleigh from Briarton. It's called Jones Franklin Road Townhomes at Briarton. I dedicated 125, so there is this right now, city of Raleigh 104, then I have dedicated extra 21 feet. How can I get that back?
So for
Back in the late 90s, when I rezoned Briarton subdivision, we required 6 lanes.
Understood. So the question is if someone included a zoning condition that complied with the requirements of the 6-lane previously, how would they change that to reduce that requirement to comply with the new streetscape plan if this passes?
Staff can follow up directly with the speaker, but there is a process to request relinquishment of right-of-way.
Great. Thank you very much. And I believe the last question was how will it affect the Dillard Drive improvement?
Going to have to ask for transportation staff to help with that one if they're able to.
Thank you. And while they're coming up, I just also wanted to clarify on the timeline question from our member of the public about the timeline. The new street plan would go into effect immediately after this is approved by council. So not after this meeting, but it would have to go to public hearing at council, and then council would have to vote on it. And once that's voted in, then it would be effective. Thank you.
Bradley Kimbrell Transportation. I want to make sure we understand which improvement project with Dillard Drive. Is that the one that DOT is doing?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you want us to follow up with the
That would be great.
staff? We're happy to.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, I would like to entertain a motion.
So I move to recommend approval of CP 1-24, the comprehensive plan amendment for Franklin Street plan amendment between Fort Sumter and Tryon Road, Jones Franklin Road street plan amendment, that is.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Fox has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. And now, moving on to item, internet to work. E2, rezoning case Z4323 at Carolina Avenue. This case is to change approximately 0.56 acres from R10 with special residential parking and TOD to R10 with special residential parking. And we will turn to Sarah Shaughnessy for a presentation from city planning staff.
Hi, good morning. So as Chair Miller said, this is a request to remove the TOD from the subject site. It's hard to tell from this map with the outline there, but the TOD is currently applied to 2 of the parcels, the westernmost parcels in the 3 parcel assemblage and half of the other parcel, which is 405 Carolina Avenue, and this request is to remove the TOD from all of those parcels. Your deadline for action is June 22nd. So this site is zoned R10 with the special residential parking overlay district as well as the TOD partially applied. Zoning in the area is mostly R10, the same district with some industrial mixed use above, sort of to the north along the railroad tracks, and then at the intersection of Western and Powell Drive, some mixed use zoning. An aerial view of the site. And then a close-up view of the site. 2 of the parcels are currently vacant, and then the third, 405, is occupied by a single-family house. I believe the occupant of the single-family house is the owner of all 3 properties here. Some additional views of the neighborhood, mostly newer development single-family homes along Carolina Avenue here, also showing the intersection of Western Boulevard and Powell Drive, which will be a BRT station in the future. No proposed conditions here. Here is a look at a comparison of the existing and the proposed entitlement. So removing the TOD does change the lot standards, so it would reduce the number of units that could potentially be built on the site. This site has a much higher walk score than average, a higher transit score, bike score, and a lower cost of transportation and a higher job proximity, all compared with the citywide average. Current bus service site is currently served by Route 27, which is a Go Raleigh route that goes north along Blue Ridge, and then also the Route 300, which is a Go Triangle route that provides service between Raleigh and Cary, and then again will be served by the future Western BRT corridor. The request would subtract from the overall housing supply. It does not include subsidized units, but it would retain the housing typologies that are currently allowed under the existing zoning, so permitting a variety of housing types, smaller units than average, compared to the city, and then within walking distance of transit. Compared with the city, this census tract has a higher percentage of residents of color, a higher percentage of the residents in this tract are low income, have less than a high school education, and rent is increasing faster in this area than compared with the city. The request is consistent with a future land use map designation of moderate scale residential, but inconsistent with a comprehensive plan overall. Consistent policies, consistent again with the future land use map designation, and the height is consistent both with the future land use map designation and the recommended height by the transit station area policy. Inconsistent policies are the transit-oriented development policies that support transit-oriented development, capitalizing on transit access, a diverse array of land uses around transit station areas, and then missing middle housing, so encouraging a variety of housing types. Your deadline for action, again, is June 22nd, 24. I'm happy to answer any questions before you hear from the applicant.
Thank you very much. Moving on to public comment for those in support. The applicant and those in favor will have a total of 10 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Samantha, and I'm representing the applicant, Kent Edwards, of this request for rezoning. So the back history on this situation was that they Kent went and purchased, he lives in 405, and so he had done a lot of the development on the houses that look just like his on that street over the years. And so he had purchased the property, the 3 lots, there were 3 lots next to him that had this non-compliant, oh, excuse me, this thing just fell off. It's my first time doing this today, so this is.
Welcome.
I'm like, well, thank you. I'm like really nervous. I don't know why. You guys seem really nice. Anyway, it was 3 parcels, and then the 405 would have been the 4th one. So and originally it was 4 total parcels. So they had a non-conforming old triplex that had been straddling over 2 of the parcels. But if you had looked on the zoning map, you wouldn't have known that they were 3 individual parcels. You would have to have pulled up the plat to see that. The owner of the properties before had 1 pin on them. So it was 3 30-foot width lots, which were pretty small. And so when Mr. Edwards purchased the properties, he did a recombination. So yes, the recombination did not go into effect until that December. And I see now that there had been something else going on at the same time that they were doing the recombination, was that the city of Raleigh was looking to implement the TOD. But if you go on the zoning maps, you're not going to see the parcel separated. This appeared to be a large parcel. It had a non-conforming multifamily on there, and so what they had to do to get the recombination done was they had to demolish that so they could have the blank lots. And then he moved the lot lines around a little bit. So 2 of the parcels, so it went from having 4 to 3 parcels. 2 of the parcels were increased in their width, not to the minimum. They were more conforming than they were before, with 35 feet each. And then Kent's 405, he extended 20 feet to his. So he made his parcel larger. He wanted to do an addition on his parcel. So that is what had happened there, why the recombination had happened after the demolition. So the recombination had been going on. So as far as it's a vacant, yes, it appears to be vacant right now, but however, there is an established use on these. He does have active building permits on all 3 properties on 405 for his addition. He has a building permit for a single-family home on 407 and a building permit for a single-family home on 407 and a half. So my concern on the 407 and the 407 and a half is that it's 30 feet in width. Is this land was it really intended to be selected by the TOD since it was a smaller lot that wasn't obvious? So I'm not sure that it is. It does have the capacity to carry the intent of the TOD on that property. One example I can give is that I had submitted for an application, for a permit application on a similar recombination where the client had recombined the lots, made the lots a little bit more conforming, but not perfectly conforming to the 45-foot minimum to use the frequent transit area. A decision came back from the zoning administrator that told us that we didn't qualify to use that option because the land wasn't meeting the minimum width. So, it made me wonder, okay, so what about Kent's property? His is 35 feet. The 407s are 35 feet, and we couldn't even get on another project the frequent transit approved, and that's much less density than a TOD. So my question is, I'm concerned about the capacity of the land. There is a use established single family on both of them. Now 405 is a situation over there with the half and half. So we weren't even able to do that addition until the text change came out last fall, allowing for construction to even occur on that part. But so he has got something kind of funky there. Something interesting that I saw in Wake County's code, which, I probably shouldn't be saying this to everybody because I did get hired to do this, but maybe I should not even have this type of opportunity to do this work. Maybe there could be something like Wake County has in their code, there's a little flexibility for situations like this that come up. It might have been a possible oversight, which is understandable. I mean, nothing's perfect, but it gives the director, the planner, a director of planning, some administrative capacity to make changes to the zoning map within like a small flexible tolerance. So if we had something like that, at least 405 probably could have been adjusted without having to go through all this. But that's really all I have to say. Thank you guys. Thank you, Sarah, for helping me so much on this. I really appreciate it. And that's all.
Thank you. Did great.
Okay. Yay, thank you.
Yeah, and we may have questions follow up as well, but I will just leave the public comment open first, and we may call you back up when we're back at the table discussion. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of this project? And seeing none, we will continue with the opposition. Is there anyone opposed to this project? If so, please come to the podium. And seeing none, we can close the public comment and bring it back to the table. So I will start off with a question for the applicant. Sorry to make you sit down and come back up. So would it be correct to say that the thrust of the goal of removing the TOD, I guess what's the issue with the TOD in this case that's with respect to what they desire to build on this site?
The capacity of the land. I understand that right now we're allowed to do the single families and things like that, but as we know, these things can change all the time. So with the text change, does the land have the capacity to carry the intent of the TOD now and in the future? So that is really the concern. And if it does, if it's better for the property, okay. But there are no sidewalks out there now. I know that it says it's walkable. I mean, at the public hearing, I didn't have anyone show up to it that they all lived in that neighborhood that was like, oh wow, this is real walkable. They were confused. They're like, we don't even have sidewalks. What are they talking about? Walkability. And there's a lot of people just walk their dogs in the street, things like that. There was a lot of concern about the safety of that street. It could use some sidewalks, but that's really the main concern. But on 405 is his biggest one. So he would at least like that to be like uniform zoning. So
that makes sense. So would it be correct to say that you initiated the request to remove the TOD when there was a prohibition within the TOD for single-family homes, and that since then we have removed that prohibition, but you're concerned that it might be added back in the future, and that's why you want to remove the TOD?
Right, it could be added back. I mean, the main concern is that, well, why, going back to the beginning, why was it actually selected anyway? I don't know, I didn't talk to the person who was like, oh, that's the one. So I don't know. But I don't know that it would have been selected had they known it was these smaller parcels, because none of the other ones were that same size, so.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
All
the
right, thank you.
Yes. So with that, I'll just bring it to the table. I know that it's been consistent with our other cases. If a single-family home wanted to be removed from the TOD, that we would permit them to do so. That is, so I will likely be in support of this case. But other questions and comments from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Fox.
We just touched on it. I just wanted to be clear. It's a question for Ms. Shaughnessy, just to really make sure I'm crystal clear. So the existing zoning is not precluding what the plans are for the property?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else would the applicant be required to provide as part of development under the TOD that would not be required if the TOD was removed?
I think certain auto-oriented uses would be prohibited. I feel like most of those are not allowed on R10 anyway and are not being contemplated by the applicant. I feel like that is the main difference there. The TOD allows for smaller lot minimums, so you could build denser, but you don't have to.
Commissioner Bennett.
Don't sit down yet. Could you bring up the map again that shows the TOD, please?
The TOD is the green there. I know it's a little hard to see.
So it seems odd that it's just those select parcels anyway. I'm trying to understand why those have the TOD on them
Yeah, so there were a few criteria that were used to apply the TOD along the southern corridor and the western corridor. One of them, which I think was the case here, is any R10 zoning districts that's developed with multifamily housing. And at the time where the TOD is applied, there was that three-unit multifamily development there. So I believe that that's why it was applied there. And then since then it was recombined, so it looks like it is just half on the single family parcel now.
Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Fox.
Generally, I would not be supportive of removing the overlay, and hearing that it does not preclude what the plans are, that reinforces my position. However, had the applicant come forward during the application of the TOD and requested removal, it likely would have been granted. So in that sense, although I'd like to support transit and the TOD overlay, I am supportive of this individual request.
Thank you. Commissioner Haver.
I agree with Commissioner Fox. Typically, I know this commission doesn't want to remove the TOD, but I think in this case, looking at how it was mapped and what the criteria was, what was there previously, and looking at the development pattern along this area, I would be in favor of this application.
Thank you very much. Any opposing views? I'd like to entertain a motion. Yes, Commissioner Fox.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of case Z4323, and I move to recommend the adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner O'Haver has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to our next item, E3, rezoning case Z6323 at ACC Boulevard. This case is to change approximately 1.67 acres from planned development to CX3 with conditions. And we will turn to Hannah Reckow for a presentation from city planning staff.
Good morning. So this is case Z6323 at 7691 ACC Boulevard. It is a request to rezone from a planned development district, the Alexander Place PD, to commercial mixed use, 3 stories, conditional use. So the zoning in this area is a mix of mixed use districts, residential districts, and then the planned development that this parcel is a part of. This is in northwest Raleigh, near the intersection of Briar Creek Parkway and Glenwood Ave, and the sort of commercial center in that area. There's also a mix of residential uses, apartments and townhomes that exist in this area, and then farther down ACC Boulevard to the east are heavier commercial and light industrial uses. This is the site. It is undeveloped currently, mostly forested. I'll point out about here are some steep slopes, and then this portion of the parcel contains those steep slopes and floodway and floodplain. So really the buildable area on this parcel is that northernmost corner. A view of what that looks like currently from ACC Boulevard. There is one proposed zoning condition which would prohibit cemeteries. And then the change in entitlement here, in the PD, this site is kind of in a subsection all of its own, and so the entitlement is really only office use, so specifically up to 20,250 square feet of office use. Switching to commercial mixed use, that would widen the range of land uses that would be possible on the site to include residential, a little bit more office use than currently permitted, and then other commercial uses like retail. So this site it has proximity to that commercial center, so higher job proximity, higher walk scores likely from that proximity, lower transit score and lower bike score than average, though. There's one route with 60-minute service that is within walking distance of this site. And just as a reminder, the site is right here on that map. The request would add housing, residential as a land use, so that does add to the housing supply. There are no requirements for those to be made affordable, but there would be a variety of housing types, smaller units, smaller lots, and is within walking distance of a transit stop. So the area residents in the census tract that this parcel falls in are similarly likely to be racial minorities as a city average, but much less likely to be low income compared with the city average. And we have seen nearly twice as fast the median rent increase compared to the city average. So the site is designated regional mixed use on the future land use map with a little bit of public parks and open space. The requested district is consistent with that, although the range of building heights does extend much beyond 3 stories. This is sort of on the edge of that, closer to more residential areas. The site is within a city growth center, which recommends urban or hybrid frontages, but also acknowledges that parcels with site constraints might need to pursue an alternative approach. There's no frontage included in this request, but the floodplain and the slopes do push development closer to the street in a way that would make a significantly suburban urban form difficult on the site, and would also make meeting most frontage requirements difficult. Request is consistent overall with the comprehensive plan. That includes these policies really touching on the mix of uses that are allowed and the compatibility with the surrounding area. Inconsistent policies, the site is located in an area with existing fire service concerns, so current standards for fire response can't be met. So that's noted in this policy. It is an existing issue, and the increase in entitlement is rather small in the grand scheme of things, but wanted to point that out. And then your deadline for action is June 22nd. Let me know if I can answer questions.
Thank you very much. We will now turn to public comment. The applicant and those in favor will have a total of 10 minutes to speak.
Good morning, everybody. Worth Mills here on behalf of the property owner and the rezoning applicant. This is a rezoning to allow for what we're calling a commissary kitchen use. You can think of it like WeWork for food prep, where individual chefs, cooks can come in and use that space for their food prep. The applicant received site plan approval for a building already. And so this rezoning is just to allow that use. During the site plan process, we worked with the planning department to determine what that commissary kitchen use would be. It was not considered an office use, which was the only use that was allowed under the current zoning. And so we've got to move forward with this rezoning application to allow those cooks and food prep workers to use this space for that use. The rezoning is consistent with the regional mixed use future land use map. Although there is no frontage that is applied to this rezoning, the site plan that was approved does have a building close to ACC. Really no parking between the building and ACC Boulevard, so it does give off more of that urban style feel. I think Hannah covered most of it, but again, just wanted to let you know why we're here, the impetus for the rezoning. Again, a site plan's already been approved. This rezoning would just allow that use to go into that building, but happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Continuing with public comment for those in support. Those in favor will, if there's anyone else, please come to the podium. And then seeing none, we will move on to the opposition. Those opposed to this case will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. And seeing none, we can bring it back to the table for questions and comments from our commissioners. Vice Chair Raines.
Since it's just a reuse or change of use case, I'm generally in favor of this, but I do have a question about, there was a note about fire response times, if the staff could address that fire department comment.
Sure, I'm just pulling up the details to that quickly. So the comment is that the site currently, Raleigh Fire can currently not meet the NFPA response standards for arrival of a second company and arrival of the full response. That's an existing condition on the site, and something that the city is looking at through the fire response master plan, which council authorized the city to proceed with a contractor on that last week, was that?
Yep. Yeah, I would also note this is already in corporate limits with rights to city services.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion. Commissioner Bennett.
Get it up. With regard to Z6323, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Commissioner Otwell has seconded. All those in favor? And those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. And moving on to item E4, rezoning case Z6523 at 2321 Crabtree Boulevard. This case is to change approximately 1.67 acres from OX4 Urban Limited to OX7 Urban Limited with conditions. And we will turn to Bronwyn Reedus for a presentation from city planning staff.
Thank you. Yes, so this is rezoning Z6523, requests to rezone about 1.5 acres at 2321 Crabtree Boulevard from office mixed use 4 stories, urban limited frontage, to office mixed use 7 stories, urban limited frontage with conditions. Your deadline for action is June 22nd. So zoning in the area is predominantly mixed use. This site is located off of Crabtree Boulevard. This is about 1/4 mile east of Capitol Boulevard. So that's why you see that mix of industrial mixed use and commercial mixed use that is really characteristic of that area along Capitol Boulevard. I'll point out too that there is a large area of R10 zoning just to the south. Here's a look at the surrounding area on an aerial image. Again, Capitol Boulevard to the west, about 1/4 mile. Some notable existing kind of proximal things. The Gateway Plaza Shopping Center is that L-shaped building there. Let me see if I can highlight it right here. Also, the Crabtree Greenway trailhead and parking area is located just abutting the site. And then here's a look at the site from kind of a different viewpoint. I'm just trying to highlight existing heights in the area with this view. Here are a couple of views of the site. The first, east-facing on Crabtree Boulevard. There is one existing building on the site today. It's a 2-story office building. And then the second view is north-facing on Timber Drive. This is that residential street coming up from the neighborhood to the south. The applicant has proposed one zoning condition prohibiting cemeteries as a use. And here's a look at the change in entitlement. You can see there is a jump in the total number of units, about a little bit more of a double of the existing entitlement. And then, of course, the office square footage and retail square footage is also increasing with the increase in height. This area is more walkable and has better access to a variety of transportation options, including low-cost and low-carbon options, and it does have very good access to jobs. There is existing bus service adjacent to the site today. So Route 3, Glasscock, does have an existing stop just adjacent to the site. You can see it right here. And then the Route 1 Capitol Boulevard route, there's a stop that's accessible to the site within about a quarter of a mile walk. This route is planned for frequent bus service in the future. It is mapped today with bus rapid transit plans in the future. So the request doesn't include any subsidized units, but it does include allowing for more units, smaller units, and a wide variety of housing types within walking distance of existing transit and planned future frequent transit service. This area is a less diverse and wealthier area of Raleigh when compared to the average, and rents have been increasing very quickly since 2016, 57% versus the citywide average of 25%. The requested zoning district is consistent with the community mixed-use future land use designation. There's a lot of urban form guidance for this site with the proximity to the future bus rapid transit on Capitol Boulevard. So we have city growth center, frequent transit area, bus rapid transit area, has a little bit of transit station area, and then an urban thoroughfare designation for Crabtree Boulevard. The request includes an urban limited frontage. This frontage is consistent with all of this guidance from the urban form map. It would require that the building is located closer to the street frontages, and no parking would be allowed between the building and the street frontages, and then it would require pedestrian entrances facing the street frontages. So really pulling the building closer to the street and creating a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly environment. The request is consistent with the future land use map, consistent with the urban form map, and consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. It's consistent with several policies in the comprehensive plan, a lot of them having to do with allowing for compact development, increasing housing entitlement close to these areas planned for future frequent transit service. And then, of course, allowing for mixed use, reducing vehicle miles traveled. And then we do have some specific area guidance that is consistent as well. No inconsistent policies have been identified with this request. The proximity to the existing neighborhood does allow space for strengthening consistency with the comprehensive plan, just addressing that transition a little bit more, but none of the policies were coming up as inconsistent due to that proximity. There are no outstanding issues, and your deadline for action again is June 22nd. I'm happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you very much. We will now open public comment for those in support. The applicant and those in favor will have a total of 10 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Michael Birch, Longleaf Law Partners, here on behalf of Loden Properties, owner of the site, and also the developer who spearheaded the redevelopment, rehabilitation of the nearby Gateway Plaza shopping center that has been, now provides retail, office, restaurant opportunities, and amenities within walking distance to the nearby neighborhoods. As noted, our request is from OX4 Urban Limited to OX7 Urban Limited. Request for that additional height is to facilitate redevelopment of this two-story office building for multifamily apartment project. Staff noted this is consistent with the future land use map, urban form map, all of the applicable comprehensive plan policies, achieves all of the vision, goals, themes for locating additional density in an area that's already well served by transit within a future service area of BRT, adjacent to a Greenway trailhead, and again, within walking distance to the Gateway Plaza Shopping Center. Also note that this is introducing a new housing type in an area that is predominantly single-family in nature in terms of the surrounding residential area. And so really we appreciate staff's presentation, and we'll leave it here to see if there are any questions from the commission.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of this project? Then seeing none, we'll move to the opposition. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this project? If so, you'll have a total of 10 minutes. And then seeing none, we can bring it back to the table for any questions, comments from our commissioners. Vice Chair Raines.
Thanks, Chair Miller. Question for the applicant. It's going from 4 to 7, and you're saying that you are requesting that to achieve the desired unit count and intended use for the site. Would you be amenable to having something step down toward the residential units or residential area to the south for scale appropriateness?
So we've looked at that. That was a topic at one of our neighborhood meetings, but there ultimately was not a request for that from those in attendance, including those that live right nearby. Some of the reasons being that residential neighborhood sits about 14 to 18 feet above the site here. Additionally, because this is a mixed-use district, we would be subject to the basic neighborhood transition standards. So that's a 50-foot setback, and that's the tallest a building can be at that 50-foot setback line is 40 feet. And so, you know, again, if you do a 5-6-story building, you're looking at 70, 80 feet of setback in that area. And again, with this site sitting lower, and again, based on the feedback that we got from those closest to the site, that's why we haven't added a condition related to transitions.
Understood. Thank you.
Other questions, thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Bennett. Sorry.
Question for the applicant. Did you consider the FTDO option?
Well, so oddly enough, and maybe there's differing opinions on the staff side of things, but the FTDO option for mixed-use districts actually only applies to those that are zoned 3 stories. And they can go to 5 stories. This one's actually zoned 4 stories, but again, even let's just assume that you could go from 4 and use the FTDO option. Again, the affordability requirements associated with that are just impractical in terms of providing that. I will note that from a planning standpoint, this site was designated, would have been consistent with heights in that 12 to 20 range. Obviously, we came in at 7, much below that height guidance there. Again, I think we're introducing a lower cost housing option relative to what is in the area. I will say as you travel a little bit, if you come down to Raleigh Boulevard and go south just a bit right off screen, you have some apartments that in 2017 were subject to, I believe it was about 229 units subject to the 60% AMI income restriction there for a term of 40 years. Again, that started running in 2017. There are also some units on the east side of Raleigh Boulevard that are income restricted to 60% AMI as well. So there are some long-term affordable units in the area as well.
Thank you.
And I can offer just some clarification. The UDO the language is a little bit unclear about whether a area zoned for 4 stories can utilize that FTDO, but we do have an interpretation from the zoning administrator that it would apply to property zoned 4 stories. They could request up to 5 stories using the FTDO.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other thoughts from our commissioners?
I have a question for transportation staff, and I'd like to know what the intersection with Timber Drive is going to look like once this parcel is developed out. I'm looking at an intersection of a neighborhood street and a 2-lane divided street there at Crabtree.
Good morning, Margaret Tartala, transportation staff. I don't know that I have a definitive answer for you, so as we get closer to site plan review, there will be more analysis done in terms of like safety and the vehicle trips we would expect, potentially a TIA at that point. I looked at that intersection. I think in terms of providing a connection across Crabtree Boulevard when there isn't one between Capitol and North Raleigh Boulevard, and accessing the Greenway across the street and the other destinations across the street, that'll definitely be something we look into more as we get a little further down the line. It is a difficult location in terms of the site distance. There's a small curve in the road there, so there are a lot of considerations we'll have to look at for that.
I'll also add as a comment, I'm concerned about the safety of the Crabtree Creek Greenway pedestrian crossing from the parking area to the trailhead. You have to cross the street. We had I don't think it was at this crossing in particular, but there was a pedestrian fatality on Crabtree Boulevard within the past few years. One of the neighborhood residents got killed trying to cross Crabtree Boulevard near the new development. I don't think that it should be on this developer to make those improvements, but I would like any recommendation that comes out of this body to include a request to have an additional look at safety measures for the Greenway crossing as well.
Thank you. I would also support that. Commissioner O'Haver.
Just to confirm with staff, and Commissioner Raines picked up on my concern, what the applicant said, and I want to confirm this with staff, is along that southern property line that's adjacent to the existing single-family home, the code is going to require a 50-foot setback, and the building height maximum at that location is 40 feet.
The neighborhood transition yard will be required. I believe there are several different types of neighborhood transition that could potentially be applicable here. I would have to kind of double check to see which one exactly would be applicable. But a neighborhood transition would be required.
Yeah, that's just my concern is 7 stories. I understand the grade change, but still, if you could confirm that for me, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, just if I could respond to Commissioner O'Haver. So the zones A and B have to total a width of 50 feet. That can be a mix of, and we would anticipate at least 20 feet of, fence and landscaping. But again, the building setback minimum is 50 feet from that southern boundary line, and that's with a building at 40 feet. So if you go to a 60-foot building, then that building setback 70 feet. Again, you could do that additional setback either as a setback, or you could do it as a building step back. So above that 40-foot line, you could then step the building back, or it could just be a straight building setback. So again, even if we went to 7 stories, let's just assume, again, 80 feet, 15 of that taken up in grade change. But again, the 40 foot is measured from the back side. So the closest to the neighbors, so you really don't take advantage of that grade change when you do that. So again, what did I say, 80 feet, so 40 feet, you'd be looking at a 90-foot setback at that point. So again, I think these are the transition rules that have that have been in place here, in addition to height. From a transition standpoint, with taking care of the neighborhood transitions, I also note the site was called for CX. We feel like staying at OX also provides a transition in terms of uses and intensity as well.
Thank you. Other comments from commissioners? Thoughts? Still contemplating? Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
Just a question. Where is the proposed transit stop relative to this site?
Are you referring to future bus rapid
Yes.
transit?
Yes.
So the northern route is not decided yet. They're still deciding on which route will happen. Kind of the best vantage point is that transit station area mapped kind of bubble that shows the area where a transit stop is anticipated to be for a future bus rapid transit line.
Okay.
It's pretty vague currently.
So I think that what you see here, right, I believe that's a quarter-mile radius, and I believe that's really centered on the intersection of Capitol and Crabtree. Again, that's kind of the current thinking, but as you may remember in some of the discussions on the Ironworks project on the other side, there was also talk about it possibly going up Atlantic. That is kind of just a TBD, but where this is being centered off of right now is really the intersection of Capitol and Crabtree.
Okay. I think when staff was given the presentation, you circled something. Maybe that's the current transit? My question's coming from, I guess, Commissioner Otwell, when you talked about the safety. I'm trying to see, are people going to be crossing the street here to get to a bus stop?
So there is an existing bus stop on Timber Drive, right in front of the site. On this view, this is the Route 3 Glasscock. This is not planned to be future bus rapid transit.
So that's the current stop. Okay, so they're not crossing Crabtree Boulevard. That's what I was trying to see. My question was wrong when I started. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from commissioners? Vice Reigns.
Just two comments. One, I like the dense residential use next to existing retail, so I would support that. I do echo Commissioner Otwell and Commissioner Bennett's concern about safety for pedestrians and cyclists, so I would encourage some study from council and staff on that. But overall, with the guidance, city guidance that allows up to 12 to 20 stories in this area, I was concerned about step downs to residential, but if neighbors are okay with this, and this falls below the overall guidance, I would generally support this case.
Thank you. Any additional thoughts? Then I'd like to entertain a motion. Yes, Commissioner Otwell.
I can make a motion. For Z6523, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated April 23rd, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment. In addition, Planning Commission recommends council direct staff to present council with options for enhanced safety where the Crabtree Creek Greenway crosses Crabtree Boulevard.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Sorry, I was trying to capture that all. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. And moving on to our next item, rezoning case Z624, Blue Ridge Road near Lake Boone Trail and UNC Rex Hospital. This case is to change approximately 3.62 acres from OX3 Urban General to NX7 with conditions. And we will turn to Robert Tate for a presentation from City Planning staff.
Chair, if I may be excused for one moment.
Yes, you are excused. Without objection.
Good morning, Commission. Robert Tate, Planning and Development. This is rezoning request Z624. This is at 2500 Blue Ridge Road. It's a request to rezone approximately 3.6 acres from OX3 UG to NX7 conditional use. Your deadline for action is June 22nd. Zoning in this area is predominantly mixed use with some office mixed use and neighborhood mixed use. Here is an aerial of the site and surrounding land uses. You can see Rex Hospital to the north of Lake Boone in the site and the North Carolina Art Museum to the south of the site, and then a mix of office and medical buildings as well. Here's a closer look at the site. You can see that the site is currently developed. It is a medical office building built in 1982. Here are a couple of ground images of the site and a few more. So looking at the southeast corner of the intersection, looking from the rear of the site north, you can see the associated parking. Looking east from Blue Ridge Road at the site, here you can clearly see the overhead major utility easement, and also the last image is looking south from Lake Boone Trail. So there are various proposed conditions the applicant have proposed. First being a prohibition on various land uses, a few to point out: vehicle fuel sales, vehicle services, vehicle sales and rental, shopping center, check cashing, and payday loan facilities, just to name a few. Also, the second condition would not permit drive-through or drive-in facilities. The third would limit residential entitlement to not exceed 260 units, and also limit commercial uses to not exceed 5,000 square feet. The fourth condition just proposes a build-to on Lake Boone Trail and also on Blue Ridge Road. The fifth condition would require retail sales to be located within or attached to a mixed-use building. A multi-tenant building. And the last condition would be a dedication of 5 affordable rental units for those that earn no more than 80% of the AMI for at least 10 years. In lieu of that, the property owner may choose to pay the city a contribution of $40,000 per affordable unit. So here, the big change is an increase in building height, also increase in maximum units allowed, and the another big change would be a decrease in commercial uses overall, where you see condition number 3 would cap that at 5,000 square feet. So this site has a higher walk score, transit score, and bike score than the citywide average, and has a higher transportation cost and job proximity than average. This site is served by 2 Go Raleigh bus lines, Route 4 and Route 27. This request would add to the housing supply, includes subsidized units, so those 5 affordable rental units that the condition proposes. This would remain, this request would keep the variety of housing types that are currently allowed, and also keep the smaller units that would already be allowed as well, and is within walking distance of transit. So this census tract has less people of color than the citywide average, and also has less low-income household than the citywide average. and rents appear to be increasing at the same rate as the city as well. So this request is consistent with the future land use map of designation of office and residential mixed use. However, a zoning frontage is not proposed with this request, so it's inconsistent with the urban form map. However, you did see that there was a build to propose by the applicant, but without addressing pedestrian access and also location and size of parking, this request was deemed inconsistent with the urban form map. Again, overall consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use map and consistent with the urban form map. Here are a list of consistent policies. And then those two inconsistent policies from the Blue Ridge Arena corridor, largely addressing buffering, pedestrian access, and the size and location of surface parking. So there are no outstanding issues, and your deadline for action is June 22nd. Here for any questions.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. The applicant and those in favor have a total of 10 minutes to speak. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. I'm Jamie Schwadler with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Northwood Raven. I'm joined today by my colleague, Walker Abbott, as well as representatives from Northwood Raven, Jeff Furman and Anthony LaRocca, as well as Oliver Robinson with McAdams. This request is to bring a mixed-use development along the Blue Ridge corridor at a major intersection to provide housing within a transit emphasis corridor in close proximity to two major job suppliers, UNC Rex, DHHS, and a little further away, NC State. So this request is similar to the one you just approved unanimously on ACC Boulevard. It's 7 stories. It's about 266 units under the envision analysis. But what's different about this case is instead of just prohibiting a cemetery, we've added meaningful conditions that respond to things that this commission and the council have desired to see in cases, and making great strides towards all of those policies. This is 2500 Blue Ridge Road, 3.5 acres. It's occupied by an aging 3-story office building that was built in 1982, that was long owned by Highwoods, and like many office owners are recognizing the changing position of office in our marketplace, the growing need for housing, and the need to reposition this for multifamily with also a potential for mixed-use component. As I mentioned, the Museum of Art is to the south, DHHS is further to the south, but UNC Rex Hospital is directly to the north. There are major transit stops within several hundred feet to the north because it's an existing employment center and intentionally an area where you want to bring housing. This is also one of the last privately held properties along the Blue Ridge corridor, so trying to visualize all of those policies and bringing those forth, this is kind of one of those opportunities where that can happen. But we do have some significant site constraints, mainly on Blue Ridge Road. This 100-foot power line easement is a high-voltage power line by Duke Energy with prohibitions where you cannot put buildings underneath the power line. So while there is some guidance that Robert discussed about the frontage and having a frontage designation, it simply isn't possible here because we're not able to place a building anywhere in that blue zone. And what you see, the existing office building is really kind of the configuration that's possible today. Nevertheless, we have added meaningful conditions to make sure that we address that. There is also about 35 feet of fall from Blue Ridge Road down Lake Boone Trail, so that lends itself to some of our requests in height. The future land use map designates this as office and residential mixed use with heights up to 7 stories recommended, which matches our request. This urban form map designates this a city growth center, as well as a frequent transit area, and Blue Ridge is a transit emphasis corridor. Lake Boone is an urban thoroughfare.
The site is also within the Health and Wellness District of the Arena Blue Ridge Area Plan, which encourages mixed-use development intensities along this corridor. So there's direct guidance there, and it's mentioned in your staff report, of the policy to have that mixed use and bringing residential. I will also note there are no apartments along the corridor on Blue Ridge between 40 and Edwards Mill Road, and the most recent apartments in this area were around the 2012, 2002 area. So a long time coming for bringing more residential uses to this area. And so what we've done is tried to bring that rezoning request to follow the arena guidance and bring that vibrancy to the corridor by adding the NX designation, 7 stories, and conditions to bring us further in line with the future land use map, as well as the policy guidance for this health and wellness center and the office and mixed use. So the conditions include prohibited uses such as shopping centers and a lot of things that we see that are less desirable along a corridor. We've also added the no standalone commercial retail, as well as a custom build to limits on the units for 260 units and 5,000 square foot of commercial maximums to bring this again closer in line to the scale that's desired by the future land use map. And we've also added 5 units of workforce housing at 80% for 10 years. We recognize that this commission has requested applicants to look into that, and we proactively added that to this case in direct response. These are the zoning conditions kind of in fuller form. I think the ones that are worth mentioning in terms of the consistency are, in addition to limiting the residential units and commercial units, we've tried to bring that no standalone retail, number 5, and bring that within the tenant building. That's in direct response to comments we've heard from the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance and trying to kind of incorporate retail where we can into the buildings, as well as the guidance that you see in the future land use map and the office and mixed use residential designation, which doesn't want to see kind of the standalone retail kind of on the corner. They really want to see it integrated, and they wanted to kind of reduce the number of square foot of retail. So the normal limitation would be 4,000 square feet of retail if this were consistent with the guidance, and we've limited ourselves to 5,000, so very close. Kind of covered that. In addition, the staff report did note that we've included this build 2, and the reason, I'll go back to the build 2. The reason the build 2 is significant is on Lake Boone Trail, that build 2 that you see there is consistent with what the urban limited form would otherwise require. The reason why we didn't add the frontage here is that we would have to do a split frontage, a split zoning, and have one frontage consistent on Lake Boone and not have a frontage on Blue Ridge because of the power line easement. So to avoid that, we just added that as a condition to bring us into consistency with the code. We didn't add a pedestrian or bicycle condition because this is a 4-lane avenue divided on both sections, which would require the street section shown on your screen. As you see, that street section, which would be required by the UDO, has not only a protected bike lane, but a separated kind of apron from the curb, as well as a street lawn, as well as a sidewalk, and those are minimums provided by the code. It's at least a 6-foot lane, as well as a minimum 6-foot sidewalk and planting area. The bike lane is 5 feet, excuse me, but a significant amount of separation and a protected bike lane to continue that corridor along Blue Ridge Road. And based on this, the staff found this overall consistent with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the future land use plan. I also note that page 9 of the staff report gave us a very high rating on the HUD jobs proximity, a 95%. And that's really because we're putting not only housing proximate to the Rex Tower, but also incorporating now this workforce housing. So kind of an extra bonus of meeting that policy, having that proximity to putting housing near where you also have transit as well as jobs. The policy guidance overwhelming supports this is where new residents should be located, and for that reason, we request your recommendation for approval this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Continuing public comment, are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in support of this project? Then, seeing none, we will open it to the opposition. Those opposed to this project will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. And seeing none there as well, we can bring this back to our table for comments from our commissioners. Vice Chair Brains.
Thank you. I'll start. Clarification for staff. There was a note on the report regarding AP-AB9 parking lot citing in regards to some options. It says the request could be made more consistent if an urban or hybrid frontage were included. Parking were further restricted or buffering along both streets were required. The applicant mentioned that they're required to do the 4-lane divided streetscape. Does that meet the city's intent for buffering? Or is the city saying that you would prefer still additional buffering on top of that?
Agreed. So I noted that as an inconsistency because I thought that additional buffering would be applicable for this site, considering that there isn't a frontage.
Could you remind us of the requirements under an urban limited streetscape? What would be the buffering on the parking? What would be the requirements for where that could be related to the building?
If you give me 1 second, I can look that up for you. I can take additional questions at this time.
So while Robert's looking up the specifics, I'll just say urban limited frontage specifies a build to, so that, with the expectation that a certain amount of the building facade will be occupying the frontage of the parcel, prohibits parking between the building and the street. Generally, is going to require pedestrian access at the right-of-way. I believe also includes some transparency requirements and spacing requirements on those pedestrian entrances. So Robert can tell you the details of that, but conceptually, that's what that urban limited frontage is going to get you. Now, urban limited specifically is a little less demanding than the urban general, which is a little less demanding than shopfront frontage, right? Like they kind of tier. Shopfront, I would say, is the most, the highest transparency requirements, the strongest limits on blank wall, tightest pedestrian entrance spacing, those types of things. And also the highest percentage of build to for the building facade to be occupying parcel frontage. Did I buy you enough time?
Yes. So the streetscape width would have a maximum of 35 feet with an urban limited frontage.
To follow up on Commissioner Rain's comments, I understand the limitations of the site, and I'm happy with the build-to requirements. I would like to see some addressing of where the parking lots can be located in relationship to the buildings. And I think that having pedestrian entrances on the primary streets is important to provide access to those wonderful multimodal connections that are going to be there.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond?
So I think with the positioning of the building is best understood as where the building is today. I think there's a little bit of a conflict between what we're trying to encourage as kind of activating that corridor and then also asking for a buffer along that corridor, right? So I think having this, and even your comment of kind of having pedestrian facing to access those things, I don't think we want to separate all of the pedestrian facilities kind of from that area. That said, I don't know that there's much that can be done under the power line here except for parking. So we could look at trying to limit kind of, other areas, but I think in general, the only place the building can go is here. So this is kind of by definition going to have some sort of parking, but again, have that nice kind of full streetscape before you get there. So, theoretically with the street trees providing that buffering. And then because this would be the likely primary street, we will have pedestrian entrances because the building's going to be oriented in that direction. So I think those are all likely to happen as a matter of course and as we design the building, because you're not going to have kind of pedestrian entrances coming this way.
I still think it's important to have a pedestrian entrance in the conditions and to have it facing Blue Ridge Road. I think that the 15% build to that would be required along Blue Ridge Road could accommodate a pedestrian entrance. That's where the primary transit's going to be, and we don't want to force residents to come through the parking lot to have to walk out to the street.
I think that's something that we can entertain. I'd like to be able to move this case forward today if we're possible, because agendas are really getting jammed up at council. So it's something that we could entertain as we go forward, if that would be favorable for the commission.
If you could think you'd pretty certain you can get a condition for a pedestrian-facing entrance on Lake Boone and then continue to try to work on Blue Ridge, I would be happy to move this along.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you. I support what's been said so far, and I also appreciate the inclusion of the 5 units of workforce housing. I know the language is what we typically see in the conditions, but I'd love to see the units and not the dedication to the fund, particularly in this area in District E, which is where I live, which is not known for affordable housing. This is such a prime location, as you've noted, with access to healthcare and arts and shopping, and so it would be nice to see those 5 units on site. But again, I recognize that this is the accepted language of the conditions. It seems to be the way all of the conditions about affordable housing are worded, so I just wanted to make that comment, but I do appreciate the consideration for those 5 units. Thanks.
I would be curious, though, does the applicant want to respond to that about the intention for the affordable units versus dedication to the fund?
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Bennett. We are trying to do the best we can to get those units delivered. I think the way that these have come forward are a reflection of where we are in the market of trying to feel out how lenders are looking at the conditions. And so I think we're most comfortable keeping it as it is and trying to work with not only lenders but other sources to be able to deliver those.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Haber.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Otwell's comments. I had some concerns and have talked with the applicant about Blue Ridge Road. I'm comfortable. I'd also like to say thank you for putting the units forward as well. Again, we always want to see more, but I understand financially it's really challenging right now. But thank you for offering that. It's important. I'm fairly comfortable if the applicant agrees that they want to make sure they address Blue Ridge Road. Is really a slight hang-up that I have, but it sounds like they're willing to address that. And with that, I'm comfortable making a motion to recommend approval and move this forward.
Thank you. Any further comments? With that, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated April 23, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment for zoning case Z0624.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Yes. Sorry, before we record that vote.
Did we want to include in the motion what we wanted
good idea.
considered as it moves to council? Because it seemed like that was,
yes,
you were, okay, moving.
With the consideration of the applicant that they address frontage on Blue Ridge Road and Lake Boone Trail and include the pedestrian entrances that are required by code in the condition.
Is that good?
I'm happy.
Okay.
Thank you. So that was the motion. And do we have a second?
And a second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to our next item, approval of the minutes from our last Planning Commission meeting on April 9th. I have one bit of comment for the rezoning case Z61 at Spring Forest Road. It's noted that Commissioners Bennett and Peeler voted against the motion to approve. but I didn't see their reasons for voting listed in there, and so I was going to see if we could include those in the minutes. I have reviewed my notes and conferred with Commissioner Bennett since she was here about that. So to summarize her reasons against, it was due to downstream flooding issues. She would like to see Raleigh be more proactive with stormwater controls beyond just compliance, with the UDO. And I can say that again, if that's helpful. Commissioner Fox, on that point?
And one additional edit I'd like to propose on page 2 in reference to case Z7022. I am noted as having voted in the affirmative on that case. However, I was excused and absent from the meeting.
And then the one other item for that same Z61 at Spring Forest for Commissioner Peeler's vote against, after reviewing my notes, it appears that instead of just increasing market rate density in this area, he wanted to see lower AMI affordable housing on this site. Thank you very much. Any other comments on the minutes? Seeing none, with that, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with those 3 changes. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes 7-0. Moving on to other business, item G1, report from the chair. I just wanted to share that as chair, as you probably know, part of my role is to serve as a liaison with council. And at our last meeting, I shared 2 items of feedback that we received from them. And if any, I've already discussed with several of you, but if anyone wants to discuss that further or how I continue to help support the commission in our interactions with council about these topics, I'm very glad to hear it. After discussing especially the issue about split votes with staff, I think there is meaningful support for good reasons on why we had no recommendation on 3 recent cases, and I'm very willing to support those decisions in front of council. If there are other items you'd like to discuss, please let me know. In that same vein, I always try to, and council often asks for me to provide the reasons when there's votes against. And so I can summarize some of those, but it would be great if we could also include those in the minutes verbatim so that people can review their own summaries of their own words and approve those so that it's not me making those up on the fly. So I will also try to start making sure we include those in the minutes. And then one other item about interacting with council, an update from Z40, which was the large affordable housing project in the Falls Neuse watershed that we discussed at the CAL meetings. Council asked that I participate in their Growth and Natural Resources Committee meeting on that case, and that meeting was scheduled for tonight, but it has been postponed until May. So if you're planning on tuning in for that, it will not occur until May. And that is all I have. So moving down to report of the members. Vice Chair Raines.
Thanks, Chair Miller. Quickly, there is a committee of the whole meeting this Thursday, April 25th. I will not be in attendance, so Commissioner Ottenwell has graciously offered to chair that meeting. We do have 3 items, CP 623 comp plan amendment, text change TC 423 digital billboards, which should be a lively conversation, and rezoning Z 5923. Blue Run Lane. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Text Change Committee will meet next on May 15th at 4 in room 305. We will continue our discussion of the Stormwater Design Manual and related UDO changes and the omnibus list. And Commissioner Mann's name is not listed as a member of Text Change, but he is a member. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
No report.
Thank you.
The next Strategic Planning Committee meeting would be on May 8th at 3 p.m. in RMB in room 303. We will be reviewing NCOD topics. And that committee membership includes Lampman, McCrimmon, Miller, Otwell, and myself.
Thank you.
Is it incorrect somewhere? Are you just saying that to
I'm just saying that out loud.
help your colleagues get themselves to church?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I don't have anything to report.
Thank you.
I'll apologize. I have a conflict and cannot attend the COW on Thursday, and I was the one that asked to put the digital billboards there. I won't be able to attend, so I want to apologize to my colleagues. Initially, I just didn't feel like there was enough information that was brought forward to make a decision, but generally, I'm not in favor of increasing the number of billboards. So I just want to share that since I won't be there. But I did want to hear a little. I felt like we owed it to the applicant to hear a little bit more. So.
And just to clarify, in increasing the number of billboards or also the digital and electronic features of billboards?
All billboards.
Okay. And all features?
I think that was option 1 that they presented.
Okay. Thank you very much. And moving on to report of the Assistant Director.
I did want to highlight that mostly I'm saying this so it's in a meeting record as well as in my written report. So we have adjusted the timing of the report of Planning Commission being delivered to council. So there's a little bit more time between you all taking action and us having to publish the report of your action. The 2-day turnaround that's typical is just really rough for everybody. It affects accuracy, which then is hard for council. I appreciate that slows the process down for applicants. And so one of the things that in tandem with that we are looking at included in the 2024 omnibus already, which you will see at Text Change Committee, is a suggestion that we amend the code to allow applicants to revise their request to be more restrictive after council has set the public hearing, but before the public hearing opens. So what's advertised, the case could be acted on only if it is more restrictive than what has been advertised. And then along with that, we are also backing up, bringing forward suggestion to council that they add to the omnibus or set up a standalone text change to revise our filing dates. So right now, materials are due unsigned 10 calendar days in advance or signed 2 business days in advance. So we're trying to get all into calendar days and also to tie why would we do 2 different kinds of days? And also to align those deadlines instead of 10 and 2. We're suggesting 8 and 18 calendar days. That, again, aligns more realistically with the publication, the generation and publication schedule for your agendas, for council's agendas, in an effort to improve staff accuracy, improve the quality of content that we're putting in front of you and in front of council, which we believe helps everybody involved in the process, the community, applicants, decision makers, staff. So that's all in motion. I also wanted to mention 2 other things. One, School of Government is offering a training for boards and commissions that I thought would be of interest to you all. You could participate on May 15th in person or on May 16th virtually. We have budget that we can cover your registration expense. Just wanted to offer that as an option and a resource to you all. Those of you who have maybe you're early in your first term and you have some opportunity that you might be on the commission for a bit longer, that might be really valuable to you. And then I wanted to also, so just email me directly if you are interested in that. And then we can help you with registration. As well, I have been contacted by the staff that support the Design Review Committee, formerly known as the Appearance Commission. It's going to be really hard for me to make that transition. They are, as usual, organizing Sir Walter Raleigh Awards for later this year, looking for a member of the Planning Commission who would serve on the jury. That is a collaboration that we have enjoyed every year for as long as I can remember. So if you're interested in serving on the Sir Walter Raleigh awards jury, please email me and let me know. I think Commissioner Raines, did you serve last year? Yeah, and so I don't, if you have questions about that, you could ask Commissioner Raines, or you may ask him to serve again on your behalf.
What is the date that they're meeting? Have they
I
established
don't
that?
have that information. Are you asking about the date of the award ceremony or the jury?
No, the jury. I mean, I'm interested, but before I send you an email, I
think
want
they
to make
probably will use who is participating to help set the meeting time. Yeah. And I think they have a general expectation of timing in terms of when they want to present the awards, but I think they would use participants' schedules to help set that time. Yeah. And it seems like we have quorum for Cal. I heard from Ms. Lampman during this meeting that she also plans to attend. So I think we're in good shape there.
We have exactly 6, so if anyone starts to feel under the weather, please, yes.
Anyway, put your mask on and come on in.
Hey, Bynum, I'm curious. I think the text changes to allow more time makes a lot of sense. It seems like we put undue pressure on staff and applicants to turn things around. What are you suggesting instead of y'all turning around in 2 days? What is the timeline that you're putting forward?
So for the report of Planning Commission, it will typically be a 3-week delay rather than 1 week. So, for example, items you heard on April 9 will appear on the May 7 agenda. This is a funny month because there were 5 Tuesdays in April. But so items from today will appear on the May 21 agenda. So it'll generally be not the next council meeting, but the meeting after that.
So okay.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to get it to the next council meeting, you're just pushing it to the
right,
which results in 3 weeks.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
A couple things. I think in light of that, I think that's great, but in light of that, I think it's even more important what Chair Miller said about noting why the dissenters dissented, because I know sometimes after 3 weeks I've forgotten and I have to look at the video again and go, wait, what did I say? So it's really important now that we note those. So it's great that you put that out there. The other thing, the Institute of Government training that's on May 15th, that's fabulous, but that's also Text Change Committee Day. So if any Text Change members attend, please let me know well in advance so we can ensure that we have quorum or reschedule the meeting.
Thank you. And with respect to that, I was just trying to look up that meeting or that School of Government course. I noted that there's also one the next day on May 16th for an affordable housing seminar for local planning officials for tools and strategies related to affordable housing. In case anyone is also interested in that. Any other comments from the commission? All right, yes.
I was just going to say, while we have folks here, because the Text Change Committee, May 8th seems like a faraway date. It's actually going to be, the day after our next meeting, right? No, May, it's going to be before our next meeting. And so do we know if we're going to have a quorum right now? I see some members from Text Change. You said May 15th is then the day after our next meeting. You don't meet again until the 14th. And so we will have already published and so forth. And if we will confirm on the 14th, but it would be nice to get a heads up as to who's available May 15th for TCC.
Great idea. So how about quick poll for the regular meeting on Tuesday, the 14th? If you're able to attend, please raise your hand.
Regular meeting the 14th as well.
On the 14th, yes, that is 7, so we should have a quorum on the 14th.
Go ahead.
And then,
Yeah.
On the 14th, I'm going to have a hard stop at noon, but I'll I'll be here, but I may have to leave early depending on the cases.
Great. And on our tech exchange committee meeting on the 15th, how many of those committee members are able to attend by show of hands? That is 4. Great. So we have that. Great news. And then strategic planning is not until the 22nd, is that right? Okay.
May 8th.
Oh, excuse me, May 8th.
Yeah, it's actually before the next planning
Excuse me,
commission
yes.
meeting.
For May 8th, if you are on the committee, can you attend strategic planning? Does that? Clear our chair. Okay.
Did I not just say?
Yes, but I was just double checking the, I'm about 85% sure I can be there. I will tell you why afterwards. I think it'll be fine. I should be there. Might be a little loopy, but it's fine. Have a procedure that morning. Okay, and with that, any other questions? Then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.